Today I'm going to speak about cognitive grammar. What is cognitive grammar? Well, Ronald Laghari, an American linguist, he is credited to be the founder of this cognitive grammar. But there are some other contributors to this cognitive linguistics or cognitive grammar ideas as well. The most famous is Fillmore, George Lakoff and Mark Johnson, and similarly there are some others as well. So I would like to start with Plato's book Republic. In Plato's book Republic, chapter number 7, first page, if you study first few pages, you will see he gives the analogy of a cave. Plato says that there are some people who are chained and they are sitting in a cave and they are facing a wall. Behind, they cannot look back, they cannot turn back because they are chained. Behind them is the mouth of the cave where sometimes they see light, and there may be a road where people are passing, animals, people, so they see shadows here. And they believe that these shadows are the real ideas. One of them is released when he goes out. He's curious, so he goes to the mouth of the cave and then out, and he sees trees and birds and other in real form. And when he looks at the sun, he's blinded by it. So his experience in the beginning, he is shocked, but when he comes to know the real forms, he comes back and he tells the people. So you can imagine here, by giving this analogy, what we think or what we know, it is like the reality of our knowledge. What we know and what we understand, whether it is real or it needs to be investigated. So I have started with this analogy to show that whatever we know, it may not be final and we may need to investigate it further. Same is the idea of grammar, because there is generative grammar, which is very famous. The history of grammar is very old. Generative grammar is the most famous, and generative grammar gives different ideas, such as the ideas are that there is a grammar gene, FOXP2, there are linguistic savants, there are brain localizations, similarly talks about critical period, poverty of stimulus, and structural dependency. There are a lot of things that generative grammar discusses. But if you look at these things, they can be discussed, such as famous American Foreign Secretary Brzezinski, and the other one was Henry Kissinger. They came to America when they had passed their critical age, but they are quite fluent in English. They're writers, especially both of them, but especially Henry Kissinger. He wrote a lot of books in English. They are on foreign policy and politics. So if you listen to him, although his accent may not sound like Bill Clinton or other native speakers. So what I wanted to say was that the ideas are always open to questions and open to interpretation. So that is why cognitive grammar is something that is interesting. And so first thing first, number one, where it started, first one, Plato gave the theory of forms, so Platonic forms, where he asserts that the physical realm is only a shadow or image of the true reality of the realm of forms. So what are forms? Forms are abstract, perfect, unchanging concepts or ideals that transcend time and space, that they exist in the realm of forms. After that, there is Aristotle. Aristotelian realism, he gave categories like number one, substance, man, horse. Number two, quantity, 1 foot, 5 foot. Number three, quality, white, grammatical. Number four, relation, double, half. Number six, place, 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 5, place. in the lyceum, in the market, in the classroom. Number 6, date. Yesterday, last year, today. Number 7, posture. Lying is sitting, is standing. And number 7, state. Has shoes on, has armors on. Action, and then last 2 are action and passion. Action is cutting, burning, and passion is being burned. And so he gave the idea of categorization, and that is also helpful in studying cognitive grammar. Then the most prominent person is Charles Fillmore. Fillmorian frames are famous, or frame semantics. So he wrote an article in 1968 that was Case for Case, in which he talks about case form, like morphology, versus deep cases, that is semantics. Deep cases are word categories that identify certain types of judgments human beings are capable of making about events such as who did it, who it happened to, and what got changed. Fillmore, 1968. Different syntactic cases, but they can be same deep cases or semantic roles. Like Ali opened the door with a key, the door opened, or the key opened the door. Now here, the deep structure is the same, while there are different syntactic cases. And frames, then Charles Fillmore, he gave categories, but later on he made some changes to his ideas. So another important concept from Fillmore is he gave 1977, that was frame semantics. Frame semantics is a theory that relates linguistic semantics to encyclopedic knowledge. The basic idea is that one can not understand the meaning of a single word without access to all the essential knowledge that relates to that word. For example, one would not be able to understand the word sell without knowing anything about situation of commercial transaction, which involve like seller, buyer, goods, money, and other things. So frames are words, framework frames evoke, words evoke frames, denote parts of frames. For example, groom, bride, it evokes marriage ceremony. Frames impose a particular perspective on a situation, such as in 10 minutes, or we will reach there in 10 minutes. Similarly, frames often reflect cultural practices like marriage or other rituals. Similarly, in the same way, basic sentence patterns of English reflect semantic frames like the ditransitive construction. Frames are culturally constructed. For example, George Lakoff gives the example of tax relief in his famous YouTube video. Metaphors is the other writer is George Lakoff, and his book was Women, Fire and Dangerous Things, and then the book which is more famous, that is Metaphors We Live By. It was written by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson. It's a very interesting book, and we should study that book if you want to understand cognitive linguistics or semantics or cognitive grammar, because this book is, you can say, one of the basic concepts. It contains one of the basic concepts. So what he says in this book, he says that the concepts that govern our thoughts are not just the matters of intellect. They also govern our everyday life functioning down to the most mundane details, our concepts, structure that we perceive, how we get around in the world, and how we relate to them. So it's he basically, you can say that our conceptual system is largely metaphorical, and he gives the example of different metaphors, like metaphors of war. For example, if you have a metaphor, your argument was not on target, you missed the point. It seems as if you couldn't defend yourself. It seems as if it's like war metaphor. Similarly, time. If you look at time and money, you can say time is money. I invested time. Time is like as if it's a commodity or money. Orientation metaphors, that is, they are those metaphors which show happiness, like they are up, and those which show sadness, they are down, like his mood sank, my heart sank. He is under fire, he's over the moon. Like if you look at them, you will see that. Similarly, ontological, like inflation is physical, it's presented like a physical form, like inflation out of control, or inflation spiraling. or inflation soaring. Then there are containers. Like metaphors are like containers, such as I'm in the classroom, you are in the race, he's out of the race. So it's like, how did you get into this line of work? So these are different types of metaphors, and they are not mutually exclusive. Like life is a journey where we have gone off the track, so they can study together. Metaphors are culturally conditioned, like labor, time. They are treated like resources because they're culturally grounded. And material resources can be quantified, they can be assigned a value, and they serve a purpose. There was a study. In that study, I watched it on YouTube video that was about George Lakoff's video. That was about metaphors we live by, and I don't remember the name of the researcher, but I remember the point, and that is there were 2 articles, and those 2 articles mentioned crime. There was only one difference. In one article they mentioned crime as beast, and the other they mentioned crime as virus. So where they mentioned beast, 71% thought that it's evil, and where they mentioned crime as virus, only 54%. So evil and virus have different connotations, because beast is taken as evil, while virus, it's like people construe it in a different way. Another idea that is, there is a YouTube video of George Lakoff, Embodied Cognition, and also Carl Friston, his video on embodied cognition, that is also BBC, I think, series. That's very interesting. But George Lakoff, because we are studying linguistics, so that is about George Lakoff. He gives the idea of embodied cognition. He says that to understand reason, we must understand the details of a visual system, of a motor system, and the general mechanism of our neural binding. So that is something which is very interesting that you should keep in mind when you are studying. And so another point that is important, it is cognitive grammar in the classroom. How do you teach that? It's an alternative approach to grammar. You can say that grammatical features such as tense, preposition, models, they are as meaningful in lexical units such as words and phrasal verbs. Here they give like extended meaning or elaboration. For example, if you use word under, it means that under what? Over. So it means what is around it. So it actually elaborates something else, like under the table. So it means that after under, we can say we'll need a noun or something similar. In the classroom, for example, take the example of prepositions at, on, in. At is, it's like 0 dimension at a point in space, and on is 1 dimensional length, and it can be 2 dimensional length and width, but in is 3 dimensional, that is length, width, and depth. Similarly, spatially we can also study like in the room, on the table, and temporal. Temporal is relating to time, on Sunday, at 7 o'clock, in the evening. It's very motivating, this cognitive grammar. Another example that I'll give is task-based language teaching, which focuses on meaning and form through tasks. So they are the same, because cognitive grammar also focuses on meaning. So they are not same, but they're similar. In cognitive, for example, how do you study cognitive grammar? Because task-based language teaching focuses on, you can say that the activities that task-based language teaching uses is, there are 3 types of activities: information gap, opinion gap, and reasoning gap. They use scaffolding, like monolingual, only one language is used, sequential, and recycling. The students are able to reproduce that. So we can say that cognitive grammar is similar to it. I can give the example of noun. For example, when we study nouns, nouns in cognitive grammar are, traditionally nouns are the names of person, places, or things, as we might have studied. And here in cognitive grammar, nouns are objects and substances. Objects like car, cycle, because they have clear outlines, they have clear boundaries, they have parts, they have beginning, and they have end. And so in this way, countable nouns will be objects, and uncountable nouns, they will be substances, such as salt. But there's one point here, such as tea. Tea is countable or uncountable here? Well, if you look at tea as liquid, that will be uncountable. But if you talk about tea in terms of, if you quantify it, like you use it as a cup of tea, like you might have certain participles, such as a carton of soap, a glass of milk, a packet of salt. So this is like the point, which is very interesting. So it means that if you, it's like tea, cup of tea is in the container, or it is quantified, then it will become, it will come into the category of objects, not in substances. So I hope that you find it interesting. Thank you very much for listening. Have a nice day.